They fined me for flying a flag, the flag my father died protecting, a $500 violation for having too much pride in the country he gave his life for. I could have lowered the flag, I could have paid the fine and walked away, but instead, I bought their clubhouse, the very building where they passed that rule, and I raised a flag so high you can see it from every corner of the town. If they want to fight, they picked the wrong veteran some. It was an ordinary Tuesday when I noticed something fluttering under my doormat. I assumed it was a pizza flyer or some junk mail, but when I unfolded it, my heart sank. Notice of violation, it read, in bold uppercase letters. Below that, a grainy photo of my flagpole, circled in red like a crime scene. The letter said my flag was unauthorized, and that it violated the HOA's height restrictions. The fine, $500, due immediately, or it would increase daily. I stood in my front yard, staring at that flag. The one that had stood quietly outside my home for the past 6 years. There were no complaints before, no warnings, just a sudden hammer of authority. I called the HOA office and was met with the same robotic line. "You'll have to bring that up at the next community meeting." I knew then this wasn't just about a flag, it was about power, and I wasn't about to bend. That flag wasn't some impulsive decoration I put up for show. It belonged to my father, Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Walker, who served 2 tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. He was a man who could turn silence into strength, who taught me how to tie a tie, ride a bike, and respect every person's right to freedom. In his last letter to me, he wrote, "Son, if anything ever happens, remember, I served so you wouldn't have to fight for the right to be who you are." A month later, we got the news. He had jumped on a grenade to save his brothers in arms. The military handed me his flag at the funeral. I was 10 years old. I didn't understand the weight of it then, not until years later when I bought this home. The day I moved in, I raised that flag before I even unpacked the boxes. It stood for sacrifice. It stood for my father. And now, they wanted to tear it down. I went to the HOA meeting, holding that violation letter like a loaded gun. I stood up, cleared my throat and said, "This flag belongs to a man who died for you, for all of us. You really gonna fine me for honoring him?" Marla, the HOA president, adjusted her glasses and barely looked at me. "We're simply enforcing regulations," she said flatly. "This neighborhood has standards." My neighbors stayed quiet. Some looked uncomfortable, some avoided my eyes. The next day, I received 2 more violation notices, one for unauthorized lighting around the flag, another for unauthorized landscaping. But the real punch came 3 days later. I came home from work and saw the pole. Empty. My flag was gone. I called 911 thinking someone had stolen it. The officer came, looked around, then told me it wasn't theft. The HOA has legal authority to remove structures in violation. I didn't say a word. I just looked at that bare pole and made a promise to myself. They might have taken the flag, but I was about to take something much bigger. I sat up all night, replaying every insult, every slight, every smug look from Marla. Then I remembered something. During that HOA meeting, someone had mentioned the clubhouse needing repairs. I did some digging and found that the HOA was in deep financial trouble. Their clubhouse was technically owned by the HOA, but leveraged against unpaid dues and fees. Through a friend of mine, Marcus, a real estate attorney, I formed an LLC, Heritage Holdings. We kept things quiet, used a shell address in another state. We approached the lien holders directly with a cash offer. A week later they accepted. The clubhouse, the heart of the HOA, was mine. The official transfer came through at 11:32 a.m. on a Friday. By 12:15 p.m., I was standing inside that same clubhouse with the deed in my hand. Marla was in the middle of a board meeting. "Excuse me," I said, walking to the center. "You may want to pause your agenda." I pulled out the papers and placed them on the table. As of this morning, this building and the land beneath it are now owned by Heritage Holdings. She blinked. "Who?" "That would be me," I said. "And first order of business, we're putting up a new flagpole, right here." You could have heard a pin drop. I brought in a crew the very next day. Not some cheap DIY team. Real professionals. They drilled deep into the soil, laid reinforced concrete, and raised a commercial-grade 100-foot flagpole. We hosted a ceremony that Sunday. Veterans, neighbors, families. Hundreds came out. A Marine color guard did the honors. A trumpet player performed taps. And when that massive flag, 20 feet wide, slowly rose into the sky, not a single soul spoke. Tears ran down faces. Veterans saluted. Even some of my former critics stood in awe. That flag flew higher than any building in the neighborhood, higher than any petty rule, higher than the hate they tried to drown me in. Marla resigned a week later. No official statement, just silence. And the HOA. They held a vote to change the flag rules. Unanimous. You see, sometimes doing the right thing isn't easy. It's expensive. It's exhausting. But when you stand for something bigger than yourself, something like family, honor, or freedom, you don't back down. You raise your flag higher. You make sure it's seen. You remind them. You can't fine a man into forgetting who he is.